part of the Press Play Podcast Network.
Hey, this is Chase Smith, founder and CEO of Press Play Podcast. You may have heard me on the Orange is Oranger Cleveland Browns podcast with Jeremy Powell, now wonderfully hosted by Holly Wetzel, Cavs on the Break NBA podcast with Sam Amico, or my own podcast, the Chase Smith Podcast. I wanted to take a few moments to talk to you about a brand new subscription-based podcast we're offering this football season, the Press Play Sports Podcast. This premium podcast feed will send all of the sports podcasts offered on the Press Play Podcast Network to one central feed. Yes, you can still follow and subscribe to all of our individual shows for free on every podcast platform. But if you wanted to consolidate your podcast feed and listen to them all in one location, the Press Play Sports Podcast is for you. I'm talking the Oranges and Oranger Browns podcast with Holly Wetzel and Jeremy Powell, Red Guy and Rhoda, Sable Brothers on the Baseline, Cavs on the Break, the Dennis Manoloff Show, the Ball Card Show, the Premium Fantasy Podcast, a Swing in a Tribe MLB podcast, and the Tim and Shipe Show, a college football podcast, all in one feed. All 9 of our sports shows curated into one single podcast feed. Out the door, you're looking at $5.36 a month after tax. That's $5.36, just about the cost of a drink at Starbucks. And this is only offered on Apple Podcasts. You can't get this anywhere else. It's an Apple Podcast exclusive. Just go to the search bar and search Press Play Sports. It'll come up and you can subscribe from there. We're excited to offer this consolidated, curated sports feed for you to enjoy. And as always, thank you so much for listening and your support.
Welcome to the latest edition of the Dennis Manoloff Show, part of the Press Play Podcast Network. Producer extraordinaire Chase Smith and I come to you in a good mood because the Cleveland Browns dominated the Chicago Bears on the lakefront, on the Lake Erie lakefront, Sunday afternoon in Cleveland. Welcome back, OBJ. Welcome to the party, Jadeveon Clowney. Oh, have a day, Myles Garrett. We see you, Kareem Hunt, even if Bears defenders don't. Most of all, mega props to you, Browns defensive coordinator Joe Woods. Your masterpiece laid the groundwork for this Browns beatdown of the Bears. Woods D held the Bears to 47 total yards. 47. Not 147, not 247, 47 total yards in 42 plays over 11 possessions. 1.1 yards per play. That's the main reason the Browns won 26-6. Questions have been asked about Joe Woods and his schemes since he became the defensive coordinator in Cleveland last year. I've not been one of those people who has knee-jerked blamed Woods when the Browns defense has struggled over the past year plus. I think that when the Browns did lose last year, it was 5 games in the regular season and 1 game in the postseason. And then, even in the wins when they were struggling defensively, it was too easy to say, oh, it's Joe Woods' fault. It's too easy to do that in general. We do it way too often in sports, professional sports, major pro sports. We blame the coaches or the manager or the coaching staff, the DCs, or the OC, the coordinators. It's too convenient. A lot of it falls at the feet of the players. And another part of it is maybe ownership and the front office hasn't provided good enough players with which to work. There's plenty of things that can go wrong with, in the NFL's case, a unit in football, be it offense, defense, or special teams, before you automatically blame the coordinator. So that's why I tried to preach patience with Woods. But, in this town, we want to win, and we want to win big, and we want every phase of the game to be great. And that's fine. That's great expectations. But it was unrealistic to expect Joe Woods' defense to be lights out last year, in part because, new guy, new system, but mostly players weren't quite up to snuff, too many injuries. You didn't have enough playmakers. So what did the Browns do this offseason? They made a concerted effort to upgrade the defense. And then you start this season, and Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs at home in their opener look good. Okay. But the Browns were in control of that game for the vast majority of the minutes. I think the Browns defense, at least, Joe Woods in consultation with head coach Kevin Stefanski, was playing more of a bend but don't break against Mahomes. Didn't want to get beat over the top with the likes of Tyreek Hill and have Patrick Mahomes answer a long drive with a 30-second drive or a minute possession. So I'm not sitting here going, oh, that defense against the Chiefs in week one, given the opponent, that it was on the road, the quarterback involved on the other side of it. I wasn't going to sit there and pile on the D and pile on Joe Woods. Last week, though, week 2, Houston Texans at home, Tyrod Taylor starting. I thought the defense could have played a lot better. Looked kind of disjointed. And while I still was, while I was wondering about the defense, I wasn't going to sit there and bury Joe Woods. I just said the defense didn't play well. No matter who was involved, no matter whose fingerprints were on it. And, the Browns were able to win 31-21 primarily because the Texans are vastly inferior. This week, they won the game because their defense was awesome. And, yeah, it's pretty obvious in a 26-6 score. But beyond that, it was the numbers that Chicago failed to put up on the way to 6 points. As we mentioned, 47 total yards on 42 plays, 1.1 per play. 6 first downs. 1 of 11 on third down. Net passing yards, 1. That's right, 1. Not 11, not 111, not 211, 1. Justin Fields, the rookie quarterback, making his first NFL start. We loved him at Ohio State. I don't love him now, especially when he's placing I want to see him do well now that he's gone, now that he's done with the Browns. But I didn't want to see him do well today, and he had a miserable day. He was sacked 9 times for 67 yards lost. He threw for 68 yards, so the net gain was 1 yard. 1 net passing yard. That is mind-blowing. I can't remember a Browns defense, at least since 99, and maybe it's happened, I just can't recall it, that was this suffocating on a quarterback to the extent that the total yardage was as low as it was, 47, and the net passing was 1. And get this, the Browns defense did all that damage and didn't rely on any turnovers or didn't get any turnovers. They were able to inflict incredible pain without forcing turnovers. So what I've always believed about Woods, because I respect his knowledge. He's incredibly smart when it comes to football, and he knows defense better than anybody else out there. I mean, if you or I or somebody else off the street sat down with Joe Woods for an hour, we would learn. He would learn absolutely nothing from us. We would learn everything from him, and we probably wouldn't understand 90% of what he was saying because his concepts and his grasp with the concepts would be so incredible. So what I felt about Joe Woods was that he needed some things to be in place before he could show what he had or show what he's capable of. And among those elements, he needed playmakers, preferably on all 3 levels of the D. The D line and the linebackers and then the DBs. And he needed an opportunity to turn people loose and to play more of an attacking style. And he got it today because he had Myles Garrett on the edge, as healthy as he's been. You would think, I mean, they're all playing injured even now. Every single NFL player has something wrong with them. But as far as we know, Myles is as healthy as he can be. Jadeveon Clowney's healthy as he can be. Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah on the second level, and other guys there, Ronnie Harrison on the third level, and Denzel Ward, and on down the line. He had playmakers on defense. He had a relatively healthy defense, and he had the opportunity. He had a rookie quarterback making his first NFL start who didn't look particularly sharp when he relieved Andy Dalton last week when the Bears hung on to beat the Bengals. So Joe Woods, no doubt, saw the opportunity to pounce, and he did. His defense did, and this is what you got. And I'm not saying that this is how it's going to be every single time with Joe Woods from here on out and his attacking D. What I'm saying is the stars aligned today to attack. The stars aligned to take some chances, to, set up certain defenses to confuse Justin Fields that might not otherwise confuse a veteran quarterback or even a Tyrod Taylor. Tyrod Taylor being a veteran, but, Tyrod Taylor's not an elite quarterback, but you probably weren't going to fool him with some of the things that you showed Justin Fields today. So you had the stars align, and the Browns defense came to play, and what a performance it was. So I am thrilled to see that, and I'm thrilled for Joe Woods because he deserves to get props. He's gotten enough grief. He deserves to get props. And by the way, it's not like overwhelming amount of grief because since he's been on board, what are the numbers? 11-5 plus 1-1 is 12-6 plus 2-1, 14-7. The Browns are 14-7 since Woods joined as DC. So it's not like they're not winning, but yeah, there were games where the defense was leaking oil and you wondered about it. But I stress patience with Joe Woods, and this is why. The defense was so good that the Browns didn't even need to have otherworldly performances from their offensive stars. Baker Mayfield was okay. He was solid, but he was nowhere near great. He missed a few passes that you would think he would normally hit by overshooting guys, especially in the first half. He settled in the second half and played better, but on balance, he wasn't great, but he wasn't bad. The point is you didn't need him to be great today. Nick Chubb, superhuman Nick Chubb, Chubb Crunch. We love Nick Chubb, but he wasn't out of his mind good today. So arguably the two biggest stars on the Cleveland Browns on the offensive side were not required to do heavy lifting, and the Browns still won easily. That's because of the defense. I mean, the Bake Show, 19-31, 246, 1 TD, no picks. Okay, but his QBR was only 40.1. He was sacked 5 times. Part of that was O-line breakdowns, yeah. The Bears front is nothing to sneeze at, especially when Khalil Mack is healthy, and he was dinged today, didn't play all the snaps. But, Baker looked a little bit, I wouldn't say rattled, but a little uncomfortable in the pocket. And, he's had much better games than that. Regardless, he wasn't, again, I have to stress, he wasn't bad. He just wasn't good. I mean, he wasn't great. Sorry about that. He was right in the middle. Chubb led the team in rushing, but he only had 84 yards on 22 carries, 3.8 yards per carry, long of 14, no touchdown runs. Didn't catch a pass. When the Browns can win going away convincingly without otherworldly games from Baker and Nick Chubb, that's a good sign. Chubb, like Mayfield, wasn't bad, but wasn't great. The best offensive player on the field today was Browns running back Kareem Hunt. Yeah, he was outstanding. But other than that, I don't know of anybody else on the offense who you would say was outstanding. So a really good sign when the Browns defense can carry the day. And when we get into the game balls, I'll let you know exactly who the stars were on the defensive side. But all in all, the Browns should feel really good about this. They beat a team they're supposed to beat. They improved to 2-1. The Bears fell to 1-2. The Browns have won 2 in a row, both at home, both against substandard competition, but you've got to win those games. You have to win them. You can't let those opportunities slip by. It's hard enough to win in the league. You have to win the games you're supposed to win and then maybe split the games you're not supposed to win, and you'll be in good shape. And right now, the Browns are fine. All right, when we return for the next segment on the Dennis Manoloff Show, I'll give out game balls from Browns over Bears Week 3.
Hi, this is Maria Gincola with Mindful MMJ Ohio. Did you know that medical marijuana has been legal in Ohio since 2016? If you have one of 25 qualifying medical conditions, you can obtain your medical marijuana card today. The most common conditions are chronic pain, including migraines and back or joint pain, PTSD, fibromyalgia, spinal cord disease or injury, and cancer. If you or someone you know is interested in learning more or to find out if you qualify, visit mindfulmmjohio.com and fill out the short pre-qualification form. The process of finding a physician, filling out paperwork, obtaining medical records, and scheduling an appointment seems like it would be a daunting process for most. But, lucky for you, Mindful MMJ Ohio will help you every step of the way to make the process quick and easy. In most cases, we can approve a qualified patient within 24 hours. And the visit is virtual, so you don't even have to leave home. So what are you waiting for? Visit mindfulmmjohio.com today. That's mindfulmmjohio.com. Let us help you be more mindful of your health and find a natural way to find relief from your symptoms.
The R&R podcast going to be rocking and rolling with you because football season is underway. College, Ohio State, the Power Fives, the MAC, the Browns. Michael Regai, are you ready to rock and roll with some football?
Kenny, I've been ready. This is our time of year. This is what R&R is all about. We're going to be with you every week. Kenny just said it. Browns, NFL, Ohio State centric. So you got to stay with us all fall and winter long here on R&R.
That's right. The Regai and Rhoda podcast coming to you here on the Press Play Podcast Network. Subscribe now and don't miss a show.
Hey everyone, I'm Holly Wetzel.
And I'm Jeremy Powell.
And we are your hosts of The Orange is Oranger, a Cleveland Browns podcast on the Press Play Podcast Network. We give you all the dog pound coverage that you'll need each week, get you ready for kickoff and beyond.
Don't miss our breakdowns of each week's matchups, game recaps, and any and all news out of Berea to feed your Browns appetite. As we all know, Holly, dogs gotta eat.
That's right, Jeremy. Hit that subscribe button and never miss an episode of the Orange is Oranger Browns podcast on the Press Play Podcast Network.
Hey everybody, it's Sam Amico from Cavs on the Break NBA podcast. Be sure to give us a listen for all your Cleveland Cavaliers recaps, analysis, breakdowns, draft talk, free agency. The list goes on and on. Give us a listen, Cavs on the Break NBA podcast.
Welcome back to the second segment of the latest edition of the Dennis Manoloff Show, part of the Press Play Podcast Network. This episode produced and directed by the great Chase Smith. We come to you after the Browns beat down the Bears 26-6 at First Energy Stadium on the shores of Lake Erie. Spent the first segment talking about how great defensive coordinator Joe Woods' unit was. And it's no surprise that several members of his crew are in the game ball discussion. I have 12 game balls to give away. I decided not to give away 14 because if I'd gone 14, 2 of them would have been cheap shots. One, Bears quarterback Justin Fields. the other Bears offensive tackle, Jason Peters. Fields had a forgettable day. He was terrible. Jason Peters had a forgettable day. He was terrible. If I wanted to go cheap shots, it would have been 14 game balls. Instead, it's going to be 12. Number 12, Browns returner, Demetric Felton, continues to impress, continues to improve, but also, I mean, he's only 3 games into his NFL career, continues to contribute. Today, he contributed 2 catches for 13 yards. That's not much, but I'll tell you what, 103 punt return yards is a lot. I mean, we've watched this special team since 99. I don't recall too many games where the Browns have had a punt returner amass more than 100 return yards. According to Andrew Gribble, who covers the Browns, does a great job. The Browns had 115 punt return yards all of last season. Demetric Felton got 103 today. He didn't have to return any kicks. There were no returnable kicks, but Felton made a contribution today in the punt game. Number 11, Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, my favorite defensive player coming out of college in this year's draft. The Browns were able to swoop him up in the second round out of Notre Dame. I call him the Joker. Some people say he's just J-O-K. He's the Swiss Army knife. He can do all sorts of things. He's sort of like a linebacker safety hybrid. But the reason I liked him so much was first of all, I got to see a lot of Notre Dame games. And secondly, I always saw number 6 flying around the field. I'm like, oh, I'd love to see this guy in a Browns uniform. Why? He makes plays. That's what he does. And here we go again, the Joker making plays. 4 total tackles, including 3 solo, a half sack, 2 passes defense. Made a key stop that helped force a field goal for the Bears in the first half. Koramoah finds a way to get to the ball and affect plays. And he did it again today. Game ball number 10, edge Jadeveon Clowney. As I said, welcome to the party, Jadeveon. 2 sacks, his first 2 with the Browns. And he was making his presence felt for sure. Number 9, game ball to wide receiver Donovan Peoples-Jones. By the way, these are ascending order of significance in my mind. Donovan Peoples-Jones, 2 catches for 39 yards. You say, well, what's the big deal? The big deal is both of the catches were terrific. Required body movement and concentration, quality catches both, and one of them was enormous for when it happened. First half, final minutes of the second quarter. 3rd and 5 from the Cleveland 16 with coming out of the 2-minute warning. The score is tied 3-3. DPJ makes a back shoulder catch, sight adjustment, quality catch for an 18-yard gain. If he doesn't make that catch, the Browns are punting from the end zone, essentially. Instead, they're able to continue the drive, and it turns into a masterpiece. 12 plays, 89 yards. And it wound up being a touchdown. So the quality of the catches and the significance of that one particular catch earns Donovan Peoples-Jones game ball number 9. Game ball number 8, tight end Austin Hooper, 2 catches for 19 yards. Again, as we said with DPJ, what's the big deal out of the 2 for 19? Well, the big deal for Hooper is one of those catches was outstanding. It was the final play of the 89-yard possession at the end of the first half. Hooper breaks open for a split second in the end zone. Baker throws it high where Hooper can go get it. Hooper does. Full extension, makes a great hands catch. and gives the Browns a 10-3 lead. Austin Hooper, game ball number 8. Game ball number 7, offensive line coach Bill Callahan. The wizard of the O-line helped make sure the Browns rushed for 215 yards on 42 carries, a 5.1 yard per average, or 5.1 yard per carry average. Callahan, is part of the game plan. We know this from what Kevin Stefanski tells us. And he doesn't just coach the O-line. He helps create play calls on that running game in particular. So Bill Callahan's O-line blowing open holes when needed, enough for 215 yards on 42 carries. So Callahan deserves game ball number 7. Game ball number 6, kicker Chase McLaughlin. Are you kidding me? Chase McLaughlin channeling Phil Dawson. 4 for 4 field goals, 2 for 2 extra points, 2 field goals made of 50 plus, including a 57-yarder when the Browns were struggling offensively early. The 57-yarder made it 3-3. It was after a 4th and 15 at the Chicago 39 with 12:31 left in the second quarter. Huge sigh of relief at that moment in time that the Browns were able to get points. You never know how the game's going to go in certain situations. And at that point, we weren't really sure how the game was going to go. And the Browns were trailing until the 57-yarder was true. Later in the game, as we said, made another one of 50 plus. I tell you, my brain is a little fried right now. I don't remember the last time a Browns kicker drilled 2 of 50 plus as part of a 4 for 4 day and 2 for 2 extra points. So it was a perfect day for Chase McLaughlin. And, especially in Cleveland, it's hard to kick field goals in Cleveland. Just ask of all the people, Phil Dawson, he'll tell you, as great as he was, how hard it is. Now, I know the wind wasn't a big factor today, but still, you give Chase McLaughlin a ton of credit. He gets game ball number 6. Game ball number 5, Odell Beckham Jr. returned to the NFL for real, first time since week 7 of the 2020 season after the ACL tear. 5 catches, 77 yards, 1 carry for 10 yards. He acknowledged that he was, exhausted by the end of the game. He couldn't get his legs going. Well, you know what? For a guy who couldn't get his legs going, that's a pretty darn good game. 5 for 77, 1 carry for 10 yards. He was definitely noticeable out there, especially with Jarvis Landry out for several more weeks. And Odell could have had 6 catches for 100 plus, but Baker missed him down in the left sideline inside the 10. So Odell, even though he was winded, even though he didn't get his legs under him by his own admission, was really good and more than passed the eye test as a lead dog, as a lead receiver. Number 5 game ball. Number 4 game ball, Kareem Hunt, the running back. Just ridiculous. 10 carries for 81 yards and a TD, 6 catches for 74 yards. The touchdown was a 29-yard thing of beauty. He avoided a tackle in the backfield, avoided 2 more tackles, and ran it in from 29 yards. Just awesome job by Kareem Hunt. He gets game ball number 4. Game ball number 3, DC Joe Woods. Just a masterful game called by Woods. He went full Bill Belichick on a rookie quarterback, had Fields confused, had him seeing ghosts. Woods was able to do some things that he, as we talked about, wouldn't probably be able to do against veteran QBs. He had unbalanced lines. He had Clowney lined up next to Garrett. He had fake blitzes. He had blitzes from different places. It was just a tremendous job by Joe Woods. And I also think it looked like he was showing Fields some stuff just so that he could use different stuff later. Like he was setting him up as if he were playing chess. And what a job by Joe Woods as the DC of that awesome defense today on the lakefront. Game ball number 2, the Browns D. I mean, you can give game balls to a lot of members of the defense. So far, I've only given one to Jeremiah Wusu-Koramoah and Jadeveon Clowney, with Joe Woods, of course, running the show. But the D in general, I mean, how do you argue with 47 total yards, 6 first downs, 1 of 11 third down, 11 possessions for 47 yards by the Bears, 1.1 yards per play, 1 yard net passing. Justin Fields, 6 of 20 for 68 yards, 9 sacks for 67 yards. Awesome job by the defense. And I keep using the word awesome, but in the case of the defense, absolutely. And game ball number 1, who else? Edge Myles Garrett. Myles Garrett with a franchise record 4.5 sacks. He wrecked the game. He did what a number 1 overall pick is supposed to do. He was the man. He was so good that he was being cheered. You could hear it through the TV. I was watching. I was, charting and watching on the Fox telecast, curtain call. And why the heck not? Garrett, who had been really quiet, let's put it bluntly, last week against the Texans. The only sack for the Browns was by Grant Delpit on a safety blitz. So Myles was coming off of a quiet game, and he looked like every one of the Bears' O-line had stolen his lunch money. What a performance by Myles. And here's the thing. He easily could have had 6.5 sacks in the game. 6.5. There were 2 plays that I definitively would say were as near as you can be on a near miss. This isn't just me saying, oh, Myles was in the neighborhood of Justin Fields, therefore he almost had another sack. No, he had 2 that barely eluded him. Otherwise, he's got 6.5 sacks in a game. That's Aaron Donald-like. That's insane. That's well, I was going to use the A word again. Oh, why not? That's awesome. So Myles Garrett, game ball number 1. All right. When we return to the Dennis Manoloff Show, part of the Press Play Podcast Network, I'll do a quick look around the NFL and talk about a couple games that stood out to me.
This is Mike Voorhees, co-host of the Swingin' a Tribe MLB podcast. If you love Cleveland Indians baseball, then this is the pod for you. We've got you covered each week as we talk about all the games, breaking news, trades, the roster, all things Tribe. You're going to love it. Go Tribe.
Hey, I'm Jason.
And I'm Gary, and we love ball cards.
And if you love ball cards too, good news. You just found your new favorite podcast. From breaks to grading.
And from collecting to flipping, join us on the Ball Card Show.
The sports podcast for the sports collector.
Hey, it's Tito, host of the Premier Fantasy Podcast. Get all the news and analysis you need to dominate your fantasy league. I've been doing this as long as anybody in the business. I can help give you the edge in your leagues. It's the Premier Fantasy Podcast, part of the Press Play Podcast Network.
Looking for new insights on the Cleveland sports scene with a unique side of Cleveland sports history? Then you found the perfect podcast. I'm John Sable.
And I'm Scott Sable, and we're hosts of the Sable Brothers on the Baseline podcast, a podcast about Cleveland sports, but not your typical podcast about the land's sports teams. Join us as we embark on a journey of sharing a unique and historical side of Cleveland sports history with the help of some former Cleveland sports stars and other historical figures.
All right here on the Sable Brothers on the Baseline podcast, part of the Press Play Podcast Network.
Welcome back to the Dennis Manoloff Show, part of the Press Play Podcast Network. During the previous break, producer extraordinaire Chase Smith made some really cogent points about the Browns D. Chase, please repeat them to the best of your recollection from a couple minutes ago.
Sure. Well, I blame the fact that I don't have a Browns podcast to talk about the Browns anymore, D-man. Holly Wetzel's hosting the Oranges Orangers, so I got to get it out somehow. And you took a break, and I took my chance. So here's what I'm thinking, man. It's really easy to jump on the defense the first couple of weeks. Oh, like they're not stepping up and they're doing their thing. But we have to remember this is the third game that a lot of these guys have played together. Only played 3 games. They had a full COVID year last year that wasn't normal, and it's not that the team didn't have players. It's not that they didn't have guys who can make plays and change the course of the game. They did. It's just they're learning to play together. And I can't think of a better game to set the tone for games coming up, to set the tone for the defense, to prove to themselves that they can, and then to show the league that they belong, and that if they weren't already on notice from the offense, hey, if you're not protecting your quarterback, if you don't scheme and plan, we're going to cause some trouble. And to see JOK flying around, to see, a lot of our defensive backfield, having a game that can gain their confidence. I think this is just exactly what they needed, D-man. And, I think the sky's the limit. We're only going to see them get better and communicate better and just be more comfortable with each other. And I think this is just an incredible, that's exactly what the defense needed.
No doubt about it. Thank you, Chase, for sharing those thoughts. Looking around the league, week 3, it opened on Thursday when the Panthers went to Houston and beat a bad Texans team 24-9. But you don't want to take too much away from the Panthers because they're now 3-0, led by Sam Darnold, who escaped that cesspool known as the New York Jets. And now with Joe Brady as the OC, is doing things with the Panthers. They're 3-0. Vikings rally to beat the Seahawks 30-17. They get their first victory. The Seahawks slipped to 1-2 as well. The Rams handled Tom Brady and the Buccaneers at home. The Rams go to 3-0. At this moment, they look like the best team in the NFL now that they've beaten the Buccaneers. The Raiders need the final seconds of overtime to finish off the Dolphins 31-28. Raiders are 3-0 behind Derek Carr. The Broncos are 3-0 after dismantling that sad sack excuse of an NFL team known as the Jets, 26-0 in Mile High. The Arizona Cardinals went to Jacksonville and beat the Jags 31-19. Urban Meyer 0-3 in his first year as an NFL head coach. Unfortunately, the Urban Meyer watch is on. I wonder if he's ever going to get to 15, the magic number, which is the number of victories that Nick Saban got as a NFL head coach in his 2 years with the Miami Dolphins. Wow. I mean, it's ugly in Jacksonville, even for a rebuild, even for a team that was 1-15 last year and then lost its last 15. So now 18 consecutive losses for Jacksonville. Bengals go to Pittsburgh and punk the Steelers 24-10. Oh, somebody get me some Kleenex. Oh, it's so sad when the Squealers get punked in their own building by the Bengals, who aren't exactly, the Chargers or the Rams. So great to see the Steelers lose, especially when they get handled at home. I love all these Steelers fans losing their minds. That's great. Falcons 17-14 over the Giants. Nobody cares about either one of those teams. Saints bounce back to beat the Patriots, beat Belichick 28-13 in Foxborough. They're 2-1. They got 2 impressive victories, although the Patriots are now 1-2. How good are they actually? But the Saints opened the season by beating the Packers. Then they stumbled against I believe it was the Panthers, and then rebounded to beat the Patriots. Chargers over the Chiefs 30-24. Chiefs are now 1-2. That game was in Arrowhead. Most importantly, we hope that the news continues to be good about Andy Reid, the coach of the Kansas City Chiefs, who was taken to the hospital after the game because he didn't feel well. But the reports out of KC are that, it was precautionary more than anything else. So thinking about Andy Reid, we love Andy Reid as long as he's not coaching against the Browns. Great guy, Hall of Fame coach. So we hope he's as healthy as a horse as soon as possible. Titans 25-16 over the Colts. Titans win at home. Back-to-back victories. after stumbling in the season opener at home against the Cardinals. The Titans have gone to Seattle and come back and won, and then came home to beat the Colts. Ravens over the Lions 19-17. It really pains me to say this. Justin Tucker, 66-yard field goal. I can't even believe I'm saying that. NFL record 66-yard field goal. Bounced it through the crossbar as time expired to give the Ravens a 19-17 victory over the Detroit Lions. I really wish the Lions would have won that game, and I wish Tucker would have missed that kick, because that would have only helped the Cleveland Browns. Instead, Tucker did what he does. I mean, he's a great kicker. He's headed to the Hall of Fame, and he boomed a 66-yarder to win it. Browns, as we said, 26-16. Bills handle the Washington football team 43-21. And as we're taping, the Packers are doing work against the 49ers late in the first half. So my takeaways from week 3 are the Steelers, even though they beat the Bills in week 1, are in trouble. The Ravens aren't unbeatable by any stretch of the imagination. The Browns looked good even when 2 of their biggest stars weren't great, Baker Mayfield and Nick Chubb. And the Bengals, obviously they're not terrible. They got Joe Burrow, they got Jamar Chase, and they went on the road and handled the Steelers. So that's from the AFC North. Overall, I did catch a lot of the Rams against the Buccaneers on TV. It was the late afternoon game on Fox. Matthew Stafford, the quarterback, his first year in LA, matched up with the brains of Sean McVay, the head coach, and you've got a lethal combination, and the Rams are rolling. They're 3-0. They look great. Their defense is fantastic. So you credit the Rams for administering the first loss to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Those are the games that really jumped off the page to me today. All right, when we come back for the final segment, a quick one about the Cleveland Indians.
Hello, Brooks here with the Books with Brooks monthly book club podcast. We read one book a month, and then we talk about it. Books like Stephen King's The Shining or Where the Crawdads Sing by Delia Owens. If you're on the hunt for book recommendations and enjoy sparkling conversation, come read along with us, and then listen in.
Hey, it's JD from the Hyman Podcast. I created this podcast to have hard conversations. Conversations that make us human but are also wildly uncomfortable. Conversations that help give voice to the voiceless and to the marginalized. Now you can listen to the entire first season on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts from. Consider this your personal invitation to join the conversation.
Hi, my name is Sam Post, owner of Phenomwell CBD Store and PhenomwellCBD.com. That's like phenomenal, PhenomwellCBD.com. Tune in where we talk with experts about how the amazing hemp plant can make a difference for people's health and well-being from the Press Play Podcast Network.
Hello, this is Don Mike Mendoza, the host of the Producing While Asian podcast. Join us to listen in on conversations with everyone who identify from producers to non-producers who all are part of the AAPI community. There's all that and more on the Producing While Asian podcast here on the Press Play Podcast Network.
Want to hear more about your favorite TV shows and movies that are on countless streaming services?
Then listen to Up Next with your new favorite hosts, me, Kristen Aviles,
and me, Christina Walter.
Every other week, we'll highlight one genre, but 2 movies or TV shows, one old and one new.
We'll let you know what's hot and what's not from your favorite
or least favorite
streaming services.
And be sure to stay tuned to the end of each episode where we shout out an artist whose name you should know for their talent in the industry.
So follow us to stay up to date with your favorite hosts from Up Next,
a part of the Press Play Podcast Network.
Welcome back to the Dennis Manoloff Show, part of the Press Play Podcast Network. Really appreciate the great Chase Smith having taken the time to produce and direct this episode. Final minutes of the show, I'm devoting to the Indians. I'm devoting to them not just because, I wouldn't really want to talk about a loss, but they lost today to the White Sox. They fell to 76 and 79. They're 39 and 41 at home. So they won't even finish the season with a winning record at home or a 500 record at home. The best they can do is 40 and 41. The reason I'm talking about them in the final minutes is because tomorrow afternoon to be precise, the Cleveland Indians play a makeup game against the Kansas City Royals at Progressive Field. It is the final of the 81 home games that the Indians will play. And it's not just the end of a season's worth of home games. It's not the end of a home schedule for a season. It is the end of an era that dates to the early 1900s. The final time that the Cleveland Indians will play a game with the name Indians across their chest, provided they do what they normally do on the road, which is to play with Cleveland across the chest for the final 6 games of the year, 3 in Kansas City, 3 in Texas. Tomorrow will be a very sentimental, very difficult day for a lot of us who have lived and died with the Indians for decades. And that's all we've ever known is the Indians. Most people alive today, that's all they've ever known is the Indians. Well, that Indians name is gone at the end of the season. They'll be changed to the Guardians. The name, the history, the colors, everything else stays, but the name changes. So unless they break with road protocol, the last time we will see Indians across the chest of players and personnel will be tomorrow at Progressive Field, makeup game against the Royals. So a meaningless game in the standings, but very meaningful for many, 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 many people who have followed the Cleveland professional baseball team. And my shows on WTAM 1100 and 106.9 FM here in Northeast Ohio, we've had a lot of fans who've called in and they're not happy about the name change, but and they say they might not ever watch again. Okay, well, I think they'll come around, but the overriding thing has been that Monday, because today could have been the day if they hadn't rescheduled this game against Kansas City, but this day is one that a lot of people are not looking forward to because they love their Indians, and it's no surprise that Indians merch has been flying off the shelves recently. So, I feel the pain. I do. I feel the pain. I didn't feel like the Indians needed to change their name. I thought they overreacted. Evidence of an overreaction to me was the fact that the Chiefs didn't do anything. The Braves didn't do anything. The Seminoles didn't do anything. The Blackhawks didn't do anything. I think the Indians, once they saw what the Washington Redskins did, they thought they should follow suit and that everybody else was going to follow them. Well, all of a sudden, nobody else was following them, and it was just the Washington football team and the Cleveland baseball team. So I didn't think they needed to do it. I think they caved to pressure, and you know what? But we're here. There's nothing else that can be done about it. The die is cast. They're going to be the Guardians next year, so I expect a very sentimental day tomorrow on the corner of Carnegie and Ontario, and in a lot of people's living rooms. All right. Thank you very much for listening. Really appreciate it. Thanks most of all to Chase for producing and directing. We'll talk to you soon.